Please welcome Todd Woodbridge, Alicia Mollick and Craig Morris to join John. Tennis, as we've heard tonight, it's about the people, the places, the sharing experiences and the knowledge. And Todd, I'd like to start with you. A stellar career, of course. We can read all about it in our program tonight and much further than that. In 2010, you're inducted into the Tennis Hall of Fame and the International Tennis Hall of Fame. I think you're pretty much a member of every elite community that exists. What's your recollections of your first tennis community? Where did you start?
Well, I grew up in Sydney, and it was my family, my mother in particular, were strong members of the Illawarra Tennis Club in Rockdale. And tennis in those days was a thriving social network of competition. How I got into it was that Mum played comp 3 times a week. Tuesdays, Thursdays in ladies midweek and Saturdays in mixed competition. By the time I was 10 years of age, I was playing Saturday afternoon mixed competition with Mum. So I had to, I had to serve second. The lady always served first. The lady always worked around the net first.
I was born in a place called Nil, which is about 2,500 people between Melbourne and Adelaide. We moved to Geelong when I was 8 years of age, and the first thing that Mum and Dad did was join the local church and the local tennis club. And when you're country people and you're moving to a town like Geelong, and Geelong was huge compared to Nil, the local church and the local tennis club were the two things that Mum and Dad were really important to get involved with the community. And I started playing tennis when with a friend from school said come along to the club and play, and it ended up being the place where we went every night after school with friends, and obviously then played, as Todd said, junior pennant and senior pennant, and it was the hub of, certainly, of our family.
I always had great role models, Todd, Fitzy, even J.A. here, our past Fed Cup captain. But my story is a very, very simple and small story. My father is a Polish immigrant. When he moved to Australia with his mother, they really didn't have too much money. Life was very simple. Also, coming from Kidman Park, the western suburbs of Adelaide, a very small, quiet, beachside suburb. To join the local tennis club as a 5-year-old cost my parents, I think, $110 for a family membership. So that in itself for us was a blessing. We could play there as many hours as we wanted, as much as we wanted. Dad paid the extra, I think, $20 to have access to the key for the entire year. So as kids, we just thought every Christmas had come at once. So that was my very small, humble story. My brother started lessons at Seaside Tennis Club. He's 3 years older than me, Richard. Being the younger sister, I thought whatever Richard did, I thought I could do better. The majority of the time I did. I learned to ride a bike before my brother.
Richard's not here at the moment.
But he, look, my parents never played sport, so for me, he was my role model growing up and the other 10 boys that lived in our street. I tagged along. I followed my brother into the sport of tennis, playing every day at Seaside Tennis Club. That was almost like my home, and I guess a form of cheap childcare for my parents as well. They would drop us off there on the weekends. We would spend hours and hours and hours playing tennis.
Well, I'm a quasi-farmer, and I know you can tell, Stephanie, but I grew up in the bush, and a little railway siding was where I played my tennis, called Cockaleachy. And we had 3 courts. There was a lot of mushrooms growing up in the middle of them. It was sort of a strange surface. A lot of grass growing up, and I learnt there with my family too. And we had an old wrought iron shed where all the ladies brought their afternoon tea, and they were the best scones I think I've ever had. The problem was the flies were huge at Cockaleachy. So that was an interesting start. But I watched the Davis Cup in 1973 when Australia beat the US. I was 12 years old, and it was the first time it was beamed live by satellite back to Australia. And we arguably had the greatest Davis Cup team in the history of the sport. There was Rod Laver, Ken Rosewell, John Newcombe and Mal Anderson in that team. We beat the US 5-0, and from then on I just wanted to play for Australia.